We got a second joint practice to recap, a preseason game to preview, updates on Irv Smith, and an explanation of duo. Jam-packed show here on the Locked On Vikings podcast. Ooh-wee!
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Locked On Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, your pal, and the kid you copied off in math class. My name is Luke Braun. You can find me on Twitter at Luke Braun NFL. Show is on Twitter at Locked On Vikings. Thank you so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day, each and every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Elias. Their app lets you access team and player stats, head-to-head team comparisons. Give yourself the edge this NFL season. Find Elias Game Plan in the App Store or Play Store today. We've got a whole bunch to go over. A second joint practice, but I want to start with the Irv Smith update that Kevin O'Connell gave us, and then later in the show, we're going to do a little X's and O's, get a little deep into it, and give you something to really watch for in this preseason game, especially in the fourth quarter if you're not the kind of person that gets like super nerdy and into like, will Nate Hairston make the team kind of questions. So O'Connell gave us basically an update on the track that Irv Smith is on. I really appreciate this. It's very nice. The coach has given us information. This is awesome. It's not going to last forever. Let me tell you. Someday he's going to say something about there being a tweak, and then it's going to get worse, and everybody's going to freak out, and then he'll stop saying it. So appreciate it while we got it, all right? But he gave us an update on where Irv Smith is with his thumb, and it's very good news. He's on track. Everything's looking great. He is still on pace to be ready for week 1. And he gave us even some details about that, which I thought were interesting, just to know like how they're approaching it. It all makes perfect sense, but we don't really hear that level of detail often. He's almost able to catch. He's allowed to, I think the way O'Connell put it, he's ready. He's allowed to sweat. So you can give him mental reps and walkthrough reps and make sure that he doesn't miss out on install and stuff. And he's almost able to actually start catching, start rehabbing that, and then you start kind of doing a ramp up, because when you go into a rehab and you're not practicing with the team anymore, well that's kind of a different conditioning that just practicing every day gets you into a different kind of shape. And so coming back from rehabbing an injury, you also then have to ramp back up to game speed. And that can be the kind of thing where, you see somebody tear up their knee and then they're walking around like they're totally perfect, but then they don't play for 4 weeks and you're like, wait, what the heck? They look totally fine. It's probably that ramp up for that level of physical activity. And so we're starting that now. And so hopefully by the time games actually mean something, he'll be ramped up. You'll be ready to put him right in. That's very exciting, especially because the tight end depth is kind of a concern. Johnny Munt is not turning any heads. He's not exactly making anybody. I mean, I don't know. The coaches love him. The Rams staff seem to love him. This seems like an O'Connell or maybe a Wes Phillips, probably more a Wes Phillips pet project type guy. Zach Davidson is still pretty raw. I think I said it on the Minnesota Football Party. He's not raw as sushi anymore. That was the famous line Dane Brugler had in his draft guide about him. Raw as sushi, like he just didn't know how to run a route because he had just started playing tight end like 10 seconds ago. Now he's got like a nice little responsible tuna sear on him. Still very raw, but there's something. But how he is as a blocker, how he is in terms of running good routes. Like I think he's running them at the right depths now, and I do think Zach Davidson deserves to make the team. But with him and Ellefson and stuff, like I don't know. Nobody in there is a world beater, and Irv Smith might be. So excited to have Irv Smith back. Also, joint practices. The Vikings practiced again, and we have a preseason game coming up. And as part of all that, I should probably talk about the headline of the day. It comes from the 49ers side this time, and it's Nick Bosa. I was really shocked to learn on the first joint practice on Wednesday that Nick Bosa had been kind of contained. He had like one really good rep against Christian Darrisaw and otherwise had been contained more or less by Darrisaw and O'Neal. I was like, wow, what a performance, right? Well, you're not going to get that twice in a row, are you? Because Nick Bosa had himself a day. He had a sequence where he got 2 sacks in a TFL all at once, and part of that which is why I'm going to talk about Duo. One of those TFLs had a tight end, I believe it was Johnny Munt, or no, maybe it was Ben Ellefson, blocking Nick Bosa one-on-one. Now, this is something a couple years ago, because I didn't know Duo, I was just like, why would you ever do that? Why would you ever have Kyle Rudolph on Khalil Mack one-on-one? I now understand why that is. You still want to limit it, and then there's ways to mitigate it as well. And even looking back, like the Vikings didn't do a good enough job there, and Khalil Mack wrecked a bunch of homes. But a couple years later, I've learned a thing or two, and I would like to share with you what I've learned about that particular dynamic in duo runs, why it's a staple for the Rams, why it's paired with outside zone, and why I think the Vikings are going to do it the same way. I mean, they've run a ton of duo in the preseason. Their duo is going to be a staple for them, and why that's in the playbook is a good conversation to have. But otherwise, we've also got joint practice stuff to do. So that is what we'll talk about next. Winners, losers, that kind of thing. But first, let me talk to you about banking. So look, we've all been in that weird spot. Oh no, we're going to overdraft. Overdraft fees suck. So what if you didn't have to deal with them? That's what Dave is for. If you need an extra gallon or two of gas so you can get to work, your paycheck's coming tomorrow, and you just need a little bit to tide you over, that is what Dave is for. It's a banking app that can help you get up to $500 instantly with extra cash. Birthday gift coming up that you forgot to budget for or something, that is the point. You can finally tackle those expenses that have been stressing you out without any hangups. There's no interest, no credit check needed. So if you're in a pinch and you need some extra help, download Dave and think of it as a helping hand from future you. Download the Dave app from the App Store right now. That's DAVE, and sign up for an extra cash account and get up to $500 instantly. No credit check, no interest. For terms and conditions, go to dave.com/legal. Instant transfer fees apply. Banking provided by Evolve. Member FDIC. Elsewhere in the joint practice recaps, Nick Bosa was the headline. Not that that's any reason for concern about Darrisaw O'Neal. I mean, he's crazy, and he's the one rep that I saw of him beating Darrisaw was this really, really cool speed to power that I would love to talk about in more depth someday. Maybe we'll see one in the preseason game, if he even plays in the preseason game, but I kind of doubt it. Elsewhere, Justin Jefferson still did Justin Jefferson things, more positive stuff from the secondary. I'm really interested to see what happens in the punt return gig. Amir Smith-Marset seems to be the front runner for that right now, but there's still Albert Wilson. There's still KJ Osborne, stuff like that. Really interested to see what happens there. And the defensive line had a really good day too. At least according to one person, Arif Hassan, who talked about this on the Minnesota Football Party, which, by the way, you can find anywhere you find your favorite podcasts on the Locked On Minnesota Sports feed alongside the Ron Johnson Show and Superior Sports Talk. And while I'm at it, check out the history documentary Part 4 coming out this weekend at and if you join me on Patreon at patreon.com/LukeBrownNFL, you can actually watch it today. You can watch Part 4. But yeah, it seems, at least according to Arif, it seems like Trent Williams had a rough day against Zadarius Smith, which is pretty cool. He didn't like what he saw from Zadarius Smith. I only saw a couple days, but I really liked what I saw. He was losing reps to Christian Darrisaw, but he was clearly like giving adept pass rushes to Darrisaw, and just because Darrisaw was defeating them does not make them any less cool. But it seems like Trent Williams actually struggled to keep up with Zadarius Smith, or at least according to that report. That's very exciting. That's like really cool. But also, Danielle Hunter is still Danielle Hunter. Harrison Phillips is still being Harrison Phillips. He seems so poised for like a monster year too, especially after that preseason game. So I'm really curious to see what we do on the defensive line in the preseason, if we give other people some run or not. DJ Wanham has started to turn some heads too. I think he's solidified himself as the fourth edge, or call it an outside linebacker. But just FYI, I'm going to be calling it edge, because calling them linebackers is, I think, needlessly confusing nomenclature. And I'd rather just call him an edge, not a defensive end, not an end man, because that implies like base end. That's like the job like Armon Watts has right now, but an edge rusher. He rushes off the edge. Danielle Hunter, Zadarius Smith, Patrick Jones, DJ Wanham. There's your 4 deep room. And if you want to keep a fifth, I don't know, like Zach McLeod maybe seems to be leading for that spot. But that's kind of your 4 deep for that room. And then there are just some like position battle things to watch as we get ready for this preseason game upcoming against the 49ers. Some of it we've already talked about, but there's really interesting stuff at the bottom of the wide receiver depth chart, right? Right now, so I think you've got one open spot after your principal 4 receivers, Jefferson, Thielen, KJ Osborne, and I think Amir Smith-Marset has been the 4th best receiver in camp by a pretty wide margin. Some people say BC Johnson has been there. I have not seen that quite yet, but I do think BC Johnson is in the lead for spot number 5. And then you have Tristan Jackson, Myron Mitchell, and like Albert Wilson has caught some clutch touchdowns, had a couple touchdowns in the preseason game. I would call him a dark horse for the spot right now, but I don't think he'll get it. And then of course Jalen Naylor as well. If any of those guys go crazy on special teams, they could end up kind of winning that 6th job. I'm penciling Dan Chisena in for it because I learned my lesson last year trying to cut him in my 53-man things, and then I saw him on the special teams drills, and I was like, yeah, okay, he's insane. And he was like a punt gun god for a few games too. So I feel like he can earn himself a roster spot that way. But I kind of want to go like back and watch all the punt gun tape. Maybe I'll do it. But I would predict that there is a 6th wide receiver spot for somebody who excels on special teams, and then a 5th wide receiver spot that doesn't necessarily have to excel on special teams with as much 4 wide, 10 personnel, 11 personnel stuff the Vikings seem to be doing. They might want to be a little deeper there. So that's really interesting, right? You got this whole glut of people, and you can kind of only choose one, like maybe 2 of them. There's some interesting, obviously the backup quarterback battle is fascinating. Sean Mannion took some stuff with the ones. It seemed like he did better than Mond on a couple of these days this week. The preseason game probably goes further than any random days of camp. So I would say Mond is still in the lead, like on the whole, just because of how much that outweighs camp. But if you just looked at camp, I would say Mannion sounds like Mannion sounds like he's been the better one. Backup nickel is an interesting battle now, that I've kind of made myself pay attention to it. So Chandon Sullivan is going to be the starter. He's been like fine, I guess. Not perfect, but he's been whatever. And then you have Perry Nickerson, who has been unbelievably volatile. You have Nate Hairston and Harrison Hand, who have both been really, really buried. So one of those guys probably gets a roster spot based on this. And I don't really love any of them unless you can come up with like a different answer to what happens if you lose Chandon Sullivan, right? Does somebody kick inside? They have not really played around or experimented with any of that with any of the outside corners. So they're not moving Caleb Evans inside. They're not moving Chris Boyd inside or anything like that. Maybe they could, but they haven't been. Or do they go 3 safety and just like live in a big nickel if they're going into nickel, and that's just their life? And that's pretty exploitable, especially if you have like a speedy team. Like I think of like the Lions have a really speedy wide receiver core. You might not want to be stuck in that. So you might have to roster one of these guys. And I don't know who it will be, but watching in the preseason game, that will be a place for one of those guys to really step up. So watch the slot. If you're interested in trying to predict the roster, watch the slot in the back half of this game. You'll probably see something informative. And then, of course, pay attention to the gunners on special teams. That always predicts a roster spot. Somebody makes the team on that and that alone. Or, linebackers make the team that way. Oh, that's the other one. Troy Dye versus Blake Lynch is going to be a big one. Troy Dye has been something of a catastrophe, I think. And I think Blake Lynch has outplayed him. And I kind of hope Blake Lynch starts to get reps over Troy Dye. I think if your linebacker room is Kendricks, Jordan Hicks, Asamoah, Blake Lynch, I feel okay about it. But if you're not going to go with Blake Lynch, then I think you have to start looking at people that other people are cutting, because I don't think Troy Dye is going to is it. I don't think he should be on a roster right now. That's kind of my preview. I mean, you don't need to know much about like the 49ers for a preseason game. Otherwise, I go into like how they play and stuff. The Shanahan offense is interesting. And if you're into scheme, well, you're going to love the rest of this show. But also you're going to really love watching the Shanahan thing, especially for how Shanahan does. Like Shanahan is McVay with a fullback. That's like super oversimplified. There's a lot of different stuff that Kyle Shanahan does, but a lot of it is taking the same concepts, zone runs, duo runs and stuff, and then adding a lead blocker to it instead of like a tight end or something, and how that changes the gaps and the angles and like the rush lanes and stuff is I think, going to be informative because the Vikings are also appear to be going in with a lead blocker. Um, they have run a lot with CJ Ham. They've drilled these plays. Like, their plan is clearly to use a fullback. So that's kind of the blueprint, and we got it right across from us in our building. So that's a fortuitous get. Pretty amicable joint practices too. There was like almost some fights. I guess Bradbury threw a punch, but like people didn't catch it, so he didn't get caught thrown out like he was supposed to. All of that is very funny. And, no big scrums. So, I guess that's nice. A little boring, but nice. So I want to shift gears now and talk about duo and talk about the reason that I decided to talk about duo is because Nick Bosa was one-on-one with the tight end a bunch in the joint practice, and people were going, well, wait, why is that? And I have an answer to that question. So let's answer that question. But first, let me talk to you about therapy. Look, especially fellas, all right, we got to get better at taking care of our mental. All right, therapy can be great for that. I've been in therapy for a couple of years, and when I was first kind of making that call, finding the right therapist was a big challenge. And I think a lot of people go to therapy and then they don't like the therapist, and then they kind of think all therapy is like that, and then they're off the subject forever. But therapy is not, especially if you're older. Older people have this idea of therapy as, oh, you're broken and you need to be fixed. It's like this internal failing if you have to go to therapy. That's like saying it's an internal failing if you have to go to the gym. It's taking care of yourself. It's taking care of your mental health, and it's finding a better angle at a better you. But switching therapists a whole bunch at the beginning and finding one that's right for you is very important. And that is where BetterHelp can come in. It's not a crisis line or anything like that. And you can log into your account anytime, and you can switch between therapists for free. You can try new people. And I super encourage you to do that if you're into this. So go to betterhelp.com/locked on. That's betterhelp.com/locked on. You can get 10% off of your first month of online therapy. They'll set you up with the calls or video or whatever, not even on camera. If you don't want to be on camera, that's all super great. That's betterhelp.com/locked on. So at one point or another, we all get really into a game of football, and then we see a defensive end make a play one-on-one with the tight end and get a tackle for a loss. We just saw some in joint practices with Nick Bosa one-on-one with Ben Ellefson. You might ask, okay, what is that play call? How did that happen? Were you surprised that Nick Bosa beat your tight end? What the heck? So, duo. Duo and zone pair very well together. Um, the reasons for that are very like anglesy. The angles that outside zone loses to, especially certain like defensive line stunts, duo can do very well at against. What you need to know about duo, and I'm not going to get super deep in the weeds, so you don't have to have some crazy outside knowledge of football. What you need to know about duo is that it is a vertical run meant to get vertical push, and it is a very physical run, and it is especially designed to beat defenses that are trying to beat horizontal runs. It's kind of your north-south to pair with your east-west. If you call outside zone and everybody's flowing to the left, that can be defeated by having one defensive lineman go to the right and kind of slice and knife inside a gap, and you can get into the backfield, get penetration, ruin the play. If people are trying to slice into gaps and exchange and stunt around, and you call duo, they're going to get their asses doubled and they're going to get their asses kicked. That's the point of duo. Fundamentally, duo will have double teams on both of the interior linemen, and these McVay offenses like to run it out of 11 personnel with 3 wide receivers because 11 personnel tends to, I don't really know why this is, but it tends to get a lot more default, like vanilla fronts. Defensive coordinators, for whatever reason, are more reticent to call their fancy exotic packages and twists and stuff against 11 personnel. And a smarter person than me will have to answer why, but that's the tendency. So you get nice, you go into 11 personnel, you get a nice simple 4-man front, or at least you can rely on getting that more often, and you get 2 defensive tackles, 2 double teams there. So that's 4 offensive linemen on 2 defensive linemen. Um, and then that leaves you a tackle, and you'll do it with a tight end. So you have a tackle and a tight end to take both the edge rushers, right? So you have a one-on-one tackle versus end. You have a two-on-one at the tack. You have a two-on-one defensive tackle, two-on-one on the other defensive tackle, and then you have tight end versus end. Now, getting those double teams on those interior guys is really important because those are combo blocks. So somebody is going to leave that double team and go climb up to a linebacker. Um, and it's vertical, right? It's all very straight up and down. So that has to be on the defensive tackles. And so it just kind of leaves you with no choice but to either leave the end unblocked and you can start pairing it with like read, so like duo read kind of stuff, or you have the tight end on the end. So what are the coaching points here to help with that? First, you take him where he wants to go. That's the one that I've heard in the most like sources is um, take the defensive end's momentum and accelerate it, like help him go where he wants to go. So if he is crashing inside, and this is the real kicker, right? That it's called a like a scraping exchange. So you have a defensive end will crash really hard inside, and they're thinking they're going to see a zone run, and they're going to crash really hard inside to beat it. And then a linebacker will come over the top, and usually that guy will be able to chase down the play. So if that end crashes inside really hard and you're the tight end on him, you say, okay, you want to go inside? Let's go inside. And the running back will kind of be told that if they see that they should work with the tight end, and like run away from wherever that's happening. So they should be expecting that the tight end, wherever the tight end is going, wherever that edge rusher is going, the tight end is going to accelerate that motion. So if he's going really far upfield or something like that, then he's got to expect, okay, that end is coming really far upfield. So I'm going to change my rushing path to take advantage of that. And now you understand the basics of duo. Like it's a pretty simple play. 2 combo blocks in the middle and in a tight end, and you just kind of help the tight end however you can. So he's got a little help from the running back. He's got a little help just from the coaching point of hoping that, hey, if that end wants to do something really extreme, do it, and the running back will cover you. And if he's really in a lot of trouble, then you can start chipping or do other double teams. You can come out in 12 personnel, put an extra tight end in there, and now you've got a tight end double team. So you'll have 3 double teams. Call it trio if you want. I don't care. And then the way that this really can unlock a lot of things is with the wide receivers blocking assignments. A lot of times they will have to go dig out a defensive back. And so that means like a defensive back in the box. Let's say you've got a really tight split, really condensed formation, and the nickel corner is in the box because of it, or is close to the box, or maybe he's cheating inside a little bit. The wide receiver's job will be to kind of go into the box with him and then dig him and then push him out of the box, dig him out, get it, like seal him off from the inside. And that sort of angled beginning to a play, run directly at a defender, turns out to be a really great route stem and a really, really helpful one on play action. And so the play action that combines with duo can be some of your best concepts, some of your deep concepts and play action forward stuff. You can really do some shot plays out of that. And that's where it really gets cool. But even beyond that, because you're getting fairly vanilla fronts, that means that only a certain amount of like blitz packages can happen. So even in straight drop back packages, having a duo package and then pairing just drop back passes with that same formation, that same start, the fit of the linebacker is going to be predictable. The fit of defensive ends will be predictable, and even sometimes the actions of defensive backs will be predictable just based off of the formation and saying, okay, they think we're doing duo. This is how they play duo. Your tape study can come into play, and you can start to design your game plan around that. Same thing happens with outside zone and with every team's run playbook and how it kind of interacts with their pass playbook. That is the point of duo. And yeah, you're basically sacrificing one bad matchup to get 2 good matchups. That's the point. You're sacrificing, okay, my tight end now has to block Nick Bosa. But in exchange, I get 2-on-1s on both of the biggest guys on the field. That's all duo. Someday we'll go over the great Twitter meme that is inside zone or duo. Inside zone runs just like on tape look a lot like duo, especially if an O lineman messes up footwork or if somebody makes a mistake. It can be really hard to differentiate which is which. Don't worry about that for now. But for now, just understand that duo is a very physical run. It's a very up and down kind of run play. And the way that it interacts with the pass game, I think, is really cool, even beyond like fake duo play action passes. Um, Look, man, there's a game this weekend. While you're waiting for it, check out the history doc. Go over the 80s and the deluge of pain that they were. We've got strikes, we've got replacement players, we've got the Les Steckel year, Herschel Walker, all that stuff. But you know what? It was also a very fun decade. Chris Dolman, Keith Millard, Anthony Carter, 2 Minute Tommy Kramer doing all sorts of heroics in the early 80s too before he started getting hurt all the time. It was really dope. I'm really happy with the episode. I'm happy with all of them. Go check it out at patreon.com/Luke Braun NFL. I'll see y'all tomorrow. And as always, or Monday, Jesus, I'll see you on Monday. And as always, Skull.